Is Andrea in Michigan with the doctor's call with our speaker, Dr. Kurt Fisnick, who has been a chiropractor for 30 years and has dedicated his life to helping people improve their health and become optimized in their health to be all that they can be. And we typically talk on here about some products from a company that we're associated with, and that is called Sisel International. They are well known with a history of 30 years of making very effective non-toxic products that you would be pretty excited to learn about. Doctor usually has himself on here talking, but he also has guest doctors who come and join us sometimes. And the topics are always relevant to health and how you can optimize your own health. So we welcome you today, Doctor. Let's talk about feeling young.
Oh, isn't that just a hot topic? That's what we should be talking about.
Hey, all us baby boomers love the idea.
Yeah. I remember when I first started getting into speaking on it and going to conferences on anti-aging. You know, they really talked about, just like you said, the baby boomers. We're that population, that group of the population. We don't want to get old. And if we get old, we don't want to look or feel like we're old. We want to act like we're 20 years old for the rest of our lives.
Exactly. Forever young.
Yeah. Forever young. That's exactly it. So you start looking at some of the things that we have going on. Wouldn't you say that it's amazing, some of the things that we can do now?
Oh, totally amazing. Yes, and it's going to get even more amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And you know, just like a fine wine, you know, we're going to get better with age.
I agree with you.
I'll be better than I ever was. Isn't that cool?
It is.
Yeah. So, you know, the thing about it, Andrea, is that if we take a look at it, and I know you've heard me talk about this before, and several other ones that are on the call or are listening to the recording, you've heard me talk about it. But, you know, you take and you look back in time, back to the days of the caveman. If a caveman made it to the age of 20 or 30, that was an old man, right?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Right? And then you look at, you know, let's fast forward a little bit. And the thing about it is that when you look at say the days of Christopher Columbus, 1492, he sailed the ocean blue, discovered America, right? Mm-hmm. How old do you think long age or longevity was then, the lifespan?
I don't know, 45?
No.
50?
No, it hadn't changed hardly at all. It was still around 20, 25 years of age, the same as a caveman.
Wow.
So we really hadn't done anything to increase human longevity. So then you look, fast forward again another couple hundred years, and we go to the days of George Washington, right? The days of the United States when we became a country. And how old do you think that long age was then, the average lifespan? If you lived to be what age? What were you considered old then?
Okay, let's go with 45 again.
No, 30.
No. Oh, my goodness.
Right? And so you start thinking about that. Here we are. We formed the United States of America, and still we hadn't increased the average lifespan of a human. Hardly at all.
Well, we're doing really good today then.
Yeah. And so then now let's fast forward again. Let's go from the age of our country. Let's go to the the late 1800s, right around the time of the Civil War, maybe a little bit after that. Andrea, how long did people live then?
I'm going to go with my answer, 45.
You're correct. You're correct. And so what happened is that we increased the lifespan about 50%, right? And so now we've gone from, from caveman days to, let's say 1900 and the 20th century. And all of a sudden, here we are, we've increased lifespan by, what is that, 150%? Not much, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the 1900s come and boom, look what happened. Look what happened. Now, the average lifespan of a human is 78, almost let's say 80 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So in 100 years, we've doubled it, but it took us how many thousands of years to increase it by 10 or 15 years?
Right. Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power, and we've really done a few things, and really, I tell people that, we can go back in history and we can look and we can say, in the days of biblical times, you talk about some of these people who lived to be, 300 years old, right? We talk about that Chinese guy that lived to be 250 years old. It's possible, right? There was like the occasional, person that lived to be a long, ripe old age, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't all that common. And what happened is that we figured out how with medicine how to make it so that that people could live to be. Hang on, my computer just said it was the battery was dying.
Uh-oh.
I got to plug into a different outlet here. But how did we do that? How did we increase lifespan so much? And really the answer to it is that we figured out how to keep babies alive. What do you think of that?
Really?
Yeah, that was probably the biggest thing, is that by keeping babies alive when they were born, because there used to be so many babies that died and mothers that died during childbirth, and you figure you take and you add that into the equation, you add that into the average, that can take the average down really quickly. Mm-hmm. Right? You can take the average lifespan down rather quickly if you have a few babies that die before they're even a year old. And then we did invent penicillin, and we got rid of infections, because infections really was the number one cause of death prior to that time, right? So those are two of the biggest breakthroughs in increasing it. But now what we're doing is we have to address the issues of aging as a disease. And we'll see in the next few years. I'm speculating that in the next few years that aging will actually be a named disease, the disease of aging.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen too quickly.
Well, it's going to happen, and the reason it's going to happen, because drug companies are working vigilantly right now to come out with drugs that will address the issues of aging.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Right, and so they're trying to come out with drugs that will address these different issues, and so this gentleman right here that's on the screen right now, Aubrey de Grey, he's really working with science. He's got his own kind of science think center over in England. And he says that science has a good understanding of how to fix the damages of aging, which really is the breakthrough for human aging. And he's saying it's near at hand. He goes on to say, he says, because of science and because of technology, because of the things that we know, he's actually saying that the first person to live to be 1,000 years old was probably born already.
I saw that on post social media this week.
Yeah. That's what he's saying. He's saying the first person to live to be 1,000 years old was probably already born. And my son, who's in medical school, he's over here shaking his head, and he's saying, no way, no way. But it's because of the medical science. It's because of the things that we're coming up with. And it's not going to be all just natural stuff. I mean, there's going to be some drugs involved with and things like that. But can you imagine being 1,000 years old?
I can, but boy, that sure would be fun. Think of all the things you could do.
And what's the key thing that would make it fun?
That you were healthy and viable for life.
If you're healthy and viable, and that's exactly it. So that's really, when I go to my anti-aging conference, that's what they're saying too, is they're saying, look, we've got it figured out how to get people to live old. We've got it figured out how to increase the lifespan. That's really a non-issue. But getting there in a healthy way,
right,
is really what we have to work with. And that's what we have to address, is how do we go after the different diseases of aging and make it so it's possible that we can actually, you know, I don't want to live to be 1,000, but if I live to be 110, that's my goal. Right? And at 110, guess what? I don't want to have any kind of neurodegeneration. I don't want to have any heart disease. I don't want to have cancer. And I really don't even want to have any kind of arthritis.
Right. You know, you just want to die because the bungee cord snapped, you know, something like that, right?
Die because the bungee cord snapped. You're funny. You're funny. And so we look at something called atrophy, and atrophy is the partial or complete wasting of different parts of the body. And you know, here I am on Wikipedia, and it says causes of atrophy include mutations which destroy the gene that build up the organ, poor nourishment, poor circulation, loss of hormonal support, loss of nerve supply to the organ, apoptosis of the cells, which is when the cells basically kill themselves, suicide of the cell, and lack of exercise. Right? And so all of these things can cause that. And so we want to kind of talk a little bit about products and things like that. And so I'm just going to kind of go through some of these things that they say are the causes of different kinds of the diseases, right? So as you age, damage to the cell is what we really want to fix, because if we can fix the cellular damage, we can address the issues, right? Right.
Well, it can't replicate correctly if it's damaged, right?
Yeah. So
clone of a clone of a clone.
So we've been talking a lot about nicotinamide riboside recently over at Sisel. We've been talking about, you know, mitochondria. Right? We've been talking about mitochondria, and you hear Tom talking about it, that when he came out with the age pill, one of the things that he was addressing was how do we keep the energy levels up, because the mitochondria is really key for it, because the mitochondria is the energy producing part of the cell, and it produces something called ATP. And the cells that are damaged the most by mitochondrial stress is the brain, the heart, and the muscle. And do you know why that is, Andrea?
No, why don't you tell me?
Don't you like it how I just throw it at you? And you don't even
I do. But I throw it right back.
You don't have a clue at all that I'm going to be asking you questions when we do these calls. But, you know, you must be getting used to it. But it's because these parts of the body, the brain, the heart, and the muscle, they use the most energy. So that's why they're damaged the most by mitochondrial stress. And so if we can take and we can make the mitochondria so that it doesn't get damaged, don't you think we can affect issues of brain, heart, and muscle, right? And think about the diseases. When you think about, just close your eyes. Everybody that's on the call, close your eyes. Unless you're driving, don't close your eyes. But if you think about it, what are the things that you think about when you think of an old person? You think of somebody they've lost their muscle, they've atrophied, they're just skin and bones, right? You've heard that term, skin and bones. And so they've lost their muscle. Well, wouldn't it make sense that if we can address the issues of the ATP, the mitochondria, we can take and we can prevent that? Well, then we take and we add on top of it the $21 million worth of research that was funded partially by the National Institutes of Aging, and we come up with a product called Sisel Ripped. Sisel Ripped. And I know it's back ordered right now, and we're making some changes, and I just know that product is going to be I just know that it's going to be 10, 20, 30, maybe 100 times stronger than what it is right now, because science is figuring these things out. But you can build this muscle back. All of a sudden, you don't atrophy, right?
Right.
If you can take and address the issues of the mitochondria, and you can affect the brain and the heart by helping out with that, again, don't you think that we're going to affect this whole thing, and we're going to prevent some of this neurodegeneration, right? And so we start looking at something that Aubrey de Grey, he calls it extracellular matrix stiffening, right? And so when I looked that up on Science Magazine, here's what it came up with. You know, this is Science Translational Magazine, December 7th, 2011. So it's a few years old, but they're addressing that. They're saying age-related intimal stiffening enhances endothelial permeability and leukocyte transmigration. And if you read the article, you go through there and it talks about atherosclerosis. You know what product we have that addresses this issue, Andrea?
No.
Restore.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so the Nobel Prize for Science was given to a group of scientists because of their work on L-arginine a number of years ago. And since that time, I think that was back in, if I remember right, it was like 1998 was when that Nobel Prize was given. But since that time, I mean, that's 20 years. In 20 years, do you think that we've made some breakthroughs and we've gone beyond what the Nobel Prize was for? Right.
And that's what'd you call it? The rotor-rooter of the arteries?
Yeah. And so what it does, it rotor-rooters out the arteries. The other thing that it does is it addresses keeping the arterial walls so they're soft and pliable.
Pliable, yeah.
Right? Because read the title of the article, age-related intimal stiffening. And so what happens is the arteries get hard, and all of a sudden, that when the blood's being pushed through there, every time the heart beats, it goes from 80 pounds of pressure to 120 pounds of pressure, right? And so it's increasing the pressure by 50% in the arteries, and so it rips them, it tears them.
So that's high blood pressure, right?
High blood pressure, but it's actually aneurysms as well.
Yeah, because it breaks away, and the artery breaks away parts.
It tears it up. So all of a sudden now we have a product that can address these, and it's based on real science, the stuff that we're looking at right now. I mean, and we can't say we have the cure. We can't say that, you know, and you'll never hear me say it. So the other thing that we talk about is we talk about removing dysfunctional cells, right? And dysfunctional cells, these are cells that just won't die, right? And so when you're looking at dysfunctional cells that won't die, your cells are supposed to have a turnover rate. They're supposed to live for so long, and then they're supposed to die, and they're supposed to go away, because the longer that the cell lives, the more chance that it's going to produce, that it's going to become abnormal. It's going to become a rogue cell. And when you have a group of these rogue cells together, that's what we call cancer. And so they found that chemicals are the ones this is really what triggers these rogue cells to produce, and these dysfunctional cells. And so if all of a sudden you're giving a cell a way to live longer through chemicals that we've made as humans, that's not good, is it?
Right.
Right? And so we want to take and we want to remove that. We want to take and we want to address that and remove these dysfunctional cells. But my answer is why don't we go after how are they produced in the first place? Toxic shampoos, toxic toothpaste, toxic personal care products, right? Wouldn't that be a good place to start?
Minimizing them would be a fantastic plan.
Yeah, address the issue of where they come from, and you know we're always going to be exposed to some things because there's just, I mean, as you move into the world that we live in, there's toxins that are going to be here for a long time, longer than you or me, unless I live to be 1,000 years old. But they'll be here a lot longer than us, right?
Yes.
And so if we could take and we can remove some of these different cells that are causing problems. All of a sudden, we can take and we can start preventing that. So then they talk about neurodegeneration, right? And neurodegeneration, according to Wikipedia, again, here, this is what's on the screen, it's a progressive loss of structure or function of the neuron, including death of the neurons, many neurodegenerative diseases, including amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is what commonly called what?
ALS.
ALS, which has got another name.
Lou Gehrig's disease.
Lou Gehrig's disease, exactly. And then you have Parkinson's disease, you have Alzheimer's, Huntington's disease. They're all neurodegenerative processes, right? And if we take a look, let's look at the testimonial that Mike gave us down in Detroit area, one of Dr. Kim's patients. What did he say about his neurodegenerative disease after using the age pill?
It appears to be reversing.
It appears to be reversing. Here's a guy that went from where he could barely walk up and down stairs. He talked. You couldn't understand him. He was so disabled that just life really was getting to him. And then on top of all that, he just couldn't function. They took away his, I mean, he couldn't drive because he couldn't see. And all of a sudden, that's coming back. Andrea, do you think that we found something here that might be something people need to hear about?
Definitely, you know, and it's not even something as serious as MS. It's people like say with neuropathy in their legs or nerve pain in their body. And like for me, 4 months of using age pill and all of my nerve pain went away.
Yeah.
So if it's working like that on, you know, just neuropathy, which I understand some people are pretty disabled with that. I wasn't, I just had pain. But you can get a good picture of the regeneration that these substances in our age pill do. You know.
Oh, yeah, and here we are in Wikipedia. It has nothing to do with Sisel. It has nothing to do with the age pill.
Right.
Let's talk about neurodegeneration. And I'm just reading this here. And it says, as research progresses, many similarities appear that relate these diseases to one another on a subcellular level. Discovering the similarities offers hope for therapeutic advances that could ameliorate many diseases simultaneously. And there's parallels between different neurodegenerative diseases, including atypical protein assemblies, as well as induced cellular death. And so we start talking about protein. That's where we start talking about glycation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what product addresses that?
The age pill.
Oh, man. Andrea, do you think you have a breakthrough in your hands?
Oh, definitely.
And, you know, and I start going through these things. I start going, here we are at Sisel. And, you know, one of the reasons that I got involved with Sisel a number of years ago, I was on my way to an anti-aging seminar down in St. Louis. And I happened to stop and talk to a buddy of mine in Omaha. And he said, Kurt, have you looked at this? Have you seen this? And I said, no, but I'll certainly take a look. And I listened to a couple recordings between Omaha and St. Louis, and all of a sudden I was sold, Andrew. I was sold. I was there. I'm in, all in.
Hey, that's all it took for me. One video recorded about the 3 products they had before the age pill came out that were phenomenal and still have. And I was sold too. I was like, yes, they've got the science, they've got financial backing, they've got the effective product, you know.
It was amazing. And the TSX was the product that caught me, because I had just really been learning about telomeres as I went to the anti-aging conferences, and that 2009, the Nobel Prize was given to not Greta Blackburn, but to Elizabeth Blackburn and a group of scientists. And I was actually going to a conference where at least one of the scientists was there speaking. And I was there going I actually was speaking up alongside of a gentleman, doctor, who was involved with that. He was actually part of the research team that got that Nobel Prize.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I thought, holy cow! You know, I'm going on stage after this guy, and he was involved with this Nobel Prize science. Who am I? I'm just this chiropractor from Fargo, North Dakota. But you know, I really the telomere science just blew me away when I found out about it. And of course, you know, a number of products are on the market that, you know, they were being sold as the greatest products on the market. And all of a sudden I'm looking at TSX, and TSX, in my opinion, blows the rest of them just out of the water. And the reason why is because, you know, we've got hundreds of times more active extracts than what these other products have. And it just makes sense that if you put more of the good thing in there, more of the good stuff, it's going to work better, right?
Right.
And so we start looking at, you know, like here, this is the National Cancer Institute, and it talks about what is cancer, right? And I remember back in the 70s, they were talking to the President's Council on Cancer here in the United States back in 1972. They talked about that we would have the cure for cancer within 5 years. So they were saying the President's Council on Cancer was saying that we'd have the cure for cancer by the year 1977. Did they do that?
No.
No, not at all, right?
But I can read what someone named Dr. Kurt Fisnick said about TSX effectiveness.
Yeah, what did I say about that?
Science shows us the very expensive extracts from astragalus are considered the gold standard amongst telomere enhancing ingredients. The top product or self-proclaimed product in the market sells for 3 to 4 times as much as Sisel TSX. Yet the formulation is about 1/3 as potent based on one ingredient. However, Sisel TSX uses 3 additional extracts from exotic plants that make its odds even better that TSX is the most effective. I don't think anyone has tested the theory, so I can only state this is my opinion. Dr. Kurt Fisnick.
Huh. Well, that guy's pretty smart.
He is.
You know, Andrea, it's a lot of fun, and we look at cancer, and we're getting to the end of the call here, and cancer is really one of those things that, when you have toxins involved with it, eventually what it's going to do, it's going to cause some issues. So if we can get rid of the toxins, cancer is a man-made disease, and if we can take and we can address that, we're going to make a huge breakthrough in that. And then if we address the issue that not only remove the cancer-causing toxins that are in our environment, but if we can take and make the body super strong, like I remember when my kids were young, they used to tell Chuck Norris jokes, right? And they'd say, if Chuck Norris jumps, he actually doesn't jump up in the air. The earth actually moves under his feet, right? But Chuck Norris jokes, and so I used to tell people, let's make your body Chuck Norris strong. Let's make your body Chuck Norris strong so that if a disease comes near you, it's more scared of you than it.
Sounds like a great plan.
Doesn't it? And, we start looking at, here's another thing that Aubrey de Grey talks about. It's addressing the issue of extracellular aggregates, right? And so they say someday physicians may supplement the natural defenses of the body's immune system. Andrea, do we have products that can do that? Yes.
We sure do.
Yeah, Fucoidan and Avenger, Influence. I mean, we've got products that can bump up the natural defenses of the body. And so, folks, you know, here we are with the end of the hour. I actually went over by a minute, but we started a minute late, so I figured that, you know, take one, give one. We're even. And so, if you haven't heard about Sisel, do it now. That's all I can say. Do it now. Whoever got you the recording, investigate this. Investigate it. Try and figure out, what are they talking about? Andrea, I'm going to let you close out the call. Have a great day.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kurt. As always, we appreciate your time and effort to bring us this great health information that you do. And yes, I totally agree with you. If this is your first time on the call, or you're just hearing this because someone shared it to you after the fact, go ahead and get back with that person and just look at information. That's all we're doing. We're sharing information so that you can make an informed decision about how you could optimize your health. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.
Thanks, Andrea.